Good afternoon. Welcome to the Embedded Executive Podcast. My name is Rich Ness. I am with Embedded Computing Design. My guest this week is Marcus Webster. He is of Webster and Webster. He's the founder and CEO. And what is it that you guys do, Marcus, real quick?
We specialize in recruiting in the embedded space. So we go way back with embedded computing design in terms of relationships, but we specialize in embedded IoT and AI security realm. But the common theme is that everything we do is embedded. So we do sales, marketing, engineering, product management for embedded IoT and embedded security, embedded edge companies.
Perfect. So you're actually, I think this is the third time we've gotten together for a podcast, and we talked about things like what's going on in the market, how do you write a resume, and that kind of stuff. But you hit on a topic earlier that I was not aware was even a topic. Security as it relates to interviews or candidates. And I'm probably not saying that right. So you explain it because you did a much better job than I did.
Well, it's kind of a warning. What's that? Warning, Will Robinson kind of moment.
Oh, you're dating yourself there.
Yes, exactly. Making a Lost in Space reference. But yeah, it's basically insider threat potential based on based on your interview process, basically, because a lot of companies are flooded now with resumes that are AI driven. AI is, of course, both a blessing and a curse. But part of the curse in this instance is that people are writing these resumes and they are flooding the market with fake resumes, and companies have to figure out who's real, who's not. At this point, it's kind of a toss up on who it is. Gartner says that by 2027, 1 in 4 candidates will be fake candidates. And it's not just individual trying to get multiple jobs at the same time. Some of it's actually nation state actors who are trying to penetrate government institutions, security companies to get insider information, intellectual property, whatever they can do. But if you hire the wrong person, you can do a whole lot of damage as a matter of hours if they're inside your network, inside your system, if you don't do the proper due diligence.
Okay, so, but I understand the part about submitting fake resumes and all that stuff, but at some point the rubber has to meet the road where you actually have to do the interview. You have to go online or in person and do the interview. So what happens at that point?
Yeah, what people are doing, they are actively interviewing people, so by phone or by Zoom. But a lot of times they'll hire people maybe with a technical background to have somewhat of a conversation, but they can't typically dig deep in those conversations. Like we're doing embedded. If I'm interviewing an embedded security engineer, I have to dig deeper into it, like the projects they're doing. And sometimes they'll have a tell in terms of like they may laugh a lot during the interviews or do some other things or pretend that they're having video problems, and they may look it up on Chat GPT to find out what the real answer is. If he'd see a lot of hesitation, or there have been instances where there are people behind them, kind of lip syncing, kind of like a Cyrano, in terms of giving them the answers to go through the interview.
But what would happen if that person actually got the job? Then what?
Yeah, when they get the job, they with AI you can fake degrees, IDs, certificates. So you have to have things in place to make sure that the people are who they are in terms of checking IDs, checking credentials, doing background checks,
Wow.
doing references, all those kind of things that you have to do.
That's really interesting. So does that mean that people who are not really qualified for these jobs are potentially getting these jobs?
Yes, and I, I, I'm not sure of how many people we have not passed on anyone to any of our clients, because we do the due diligence to make sure they are who they are. If we get instant any whiff that they may not be real, we discontinue the conversation. But not so much smaller companies don't have an HR, aren't savvy, don't know about these things. At Embedded World, where I saw you last, I talked to every CEO about this. None of them had heard about it at all. And I was like, thank you, Marcus, for letting me know. And because it's a big threat, especially if you're a security company. If you get someone in the company that later one of your government clients finds out about it, the audience, the public at large finds out about it, and you're going for acquisition or IPO, you're dead in the water because your reputation is ruined.
So when you have these conversations, were they taking this seriously, or were they sort of just blowing it off, saying, I'm not sure it's real, or it's not my problem, it's my HR department's problem?
No, they're taking it seriously. Um, and some our clients are already getting. They've already had other kind of instances where they know that people are trying to infiltrate their systems, sending fake text messages, fake emails, spoofing people. So they already know they're at risk. But I just think I kind of took it to a different level for them, that they have to be more diligent in terms of how they interview their client, their candidates. Um, you have to have some kind of verification process, if that means flying each candidate in now to make sure they are who they say they are. That's the kind of things you have to do to be diligent, because
But
the
we live
deep
in
fake.
a Zoom world now, where I mean, that's how at least in the initial go around, that's how almost all these interviews take place.
Yeah, but there are people doing deep fakes via Zoom, and what some people have done in those interviews, they've given the candidates certain instruction. They tell them ahead of time, we're trying to make sure that we're validating ID. But in one of the videos I saw, the interviewer asked the candidate to raise their hand above their head, and they couldn't do it in the interview because the AI wasn't. I think it raised his hand, but it couldn't follow precise instructions. So there's deep fakes, there's fake people, and it's a lot of risk for internal fraud. And
That's
as I mentioned
wild.
before, that they got people impersonating people. As I told you before, I had a candidate which I thought was real, impersonating a Google candidate. What I didn't tell you is that I actually followed up with that actual real person, and it's like, hey, I just want to let you know this person is impersonating you, and he thanked me for letting him know. But a lot of people may be, especially if you're one of the FANG companies, I think, Google, Meta, people want to talk to those people, so they get excited about talking to them. But then they find out, in the end, like I did, that wasn't a real person.
Okay, so two questions from the two different perspectives. What do I do if I'm that person interviewing? And then what do I do if I'm the person at the other end interviewing the person who may not be a real person?
One thing you can do is reach out to us, and we can help you with best practices on how to deal with those kind of issues. There's a little bit of information probably out there on the web, but put in best practices and looking for things, as I mentioned before. Hesitation in interviewing, can't go deep in the conversation. Cultural questions, like I asked one candidate because I was suspicious. I was like, "How'd you get that? How'd you get that zip code? I mean, that area code on your phone number?" And their answer was, very specific. I got this number in Southwest Alabama. No one would really normally say that kind of thing. So when you hear things that people don't normally say, that aren't culturally, in line with how we usually describe things, that's when my spidey senses go off. So
The only catch there is that engineers tend to not speak like regular people.
yeah, and that could be a problem for lay people who are in, so they may get past the first round with a recruiter screen in the company. We're technical over here, so we able to dig a
Mhm.
little deeper into the weeds and speak the same language as an engineer. Um, but yeah, so cause there's been candidates with companies I know that have got to the last round before they figured out it wasn't the wrong person. So they've gone through like 4 or 5 rounds of interviews. So I'm sure a lot of people have gone through the same thing, but how many have gotten through? And that's the question.
Wow, that is pretty amazing. So, what do you do besides call you guys? I mean, if it's that prevalent out there, are there best practices?
Yes, there's a FBI notice about warning
Wow.
company about best practices also, but it's kind of a general, because that includes, email spoofing, having
Mhm.
proper security in line, looking for telltale signs of candidates that may or may not. Um, there's also software that will screen for AI. But everybody's using AI for the resumes now. So that software could also weed out good people. So you need human intelligence to kind of figure out which one are real or not. But many times I gotta tell our clients that we now are probably the first line of defense for those kind of things, because we're looking at it from a human perspective, but also a technological perspective.
That is pretty unbelievable, and I certainly thank you for bringing that to our attention. I never would have thought that this was a thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't. That's why I'm like letting everyone know that you have to really be careful, especially if you're hiring remote workers. You have to make sure they are who they say they are.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marcus. I appreciate your time on this issue.
And thank you. Good talking to you again.
That was Marcus Webster of Webster and Webster, and I am Rich Nass with Embedded Computing Design.